Welcome to the Popcorn Junkies.
Welcome to Popcorn Junkies.
Nanny
Hi.
Di, film critique a la critique. I like our reviews.
I do.
I think we really get into the body of a film. It means we can get in there and open up the
We
body
can.
of a
I'm
film.
not quite sure what that means in terms of this film, but we will see.
Well, if you haven't seen our Tar review, by the way, guys, subscribe, hit the subscription button, hit the notification bell, all that kind of stuff. If you like your film news, we have the Popcorn Junkies playlist. You can just follow the Popcorn Junkies playlist if you don't fancy lots of vlogs of Nadia and her knickers. Film reviews, we cover all sorts of things from superhero films, franchise films, blockbusters, all the way down to really esoteric art house films, documentaries, etc., etc. We have no snobbery around the type of film that we review.
Oscar contenders, Oscar non-contenders,
Absolutely,
you name it.
You name it. We don't get to see everything, but we try and bring to you as much as we possibly can. So, what is the review today? The review today is what is it? It's the Knock at the Cabin.
Can I just say before we say another single word,
Yes.
Isn't that a dreadful title?
It's awkward. It's directed by M. Night Shyamalan, and I have some misgivings about M. Night Shyamalan.
So do I, Mark.
Obviously, I think he kind of hit the big time with The Sixth Sense.
Yeah, that's his major.
That was his
success.
major one. But then he went on to make the sort of superhero films, Unbreakable, Split, and Glass. He did those.
I quite like Glass.
Yeah, it's all right. It just kind of missed it for me.
It.
And he did last year, or the year before, he did Old, which I thought was a really exciting premise that just dribbled into the sea, which was about people getting old and naturally quickly on a beach.
I think that's part of his problem, is that the premises sound fascinating, or to him, he thinks I'm going to make a film about this and it sounds really good. I'm sure the premise for this, sitting around a coffee table, would have sounded good, but they all dribble away.
Well, he also made a series called The Servant for Apple TV, and in a weird way, stretched across a broader amount of time. I mean, what I haven't said is, he's clearly a very competent filmmaker, and he gets a lot of projects away. I mean, he gets funding.
Doesn't he?
Yeah. And he kind of churns them out. He's almost like a sort of pulp fiction novelist, isn't he?
But he's also a bit of an auteur, don't you?
Yes, and he's always in the films. He's always in the films. He's in this one as well.
Is
and he was in Glass. He was the kind of buggy driver in Old. He was the buggy driver. Does the M. Night Shyamalan aspect, did it affect your feelings going in?
Well, no, it didn't, because I didn't know it was by him. I did. I'd been told, but
What can you say about that? That's really
no,
odd.
nothing. Sorry, I'd forgotten, and
Right.
so when it came up on the screen, or when I suddenly realised as the film started, I was already going through in my head thinking that is such a clunky title, such a clunky title.
Right.
Once I knew it was him,
Did you sort of go, oh?
well, I quite like. Again, I'm repeating myself, but I like the idea of Old so much that then I had to let go of it because it just didn't work over as a film or over. And I don't think that was necessarily his fault. I just think.
I think it has to be if you've written it and
I
directed
suppose.
it.
That's true. That's true.
This stars Dave Bautista. Come on, Drax. Who was also in Glass Onion, a Knives Out story. Rupert Grint, he of Harry Potter.
He's in it for 2 seconds.
2 seconds, absolutely. Jonathan Groff and Ben Aldridge playing a gay couple who have essentially booked this cabin in the wood with their daughter, their adopted daughter, who is played by Kristen Cui, who plays their young daughter.
Yeah.
Okay, where do we start with this film? The premise of this film is bizarre. So they're in a cabin in the wood. She's catching, I don't know, what are they called? Crickets, locusts, whatever.
Grasshoppers.
And Dave Bautista wanders out of the woods towards her.
Now, let's face it, if Dave Bautista wanders towards you, be afraid, be very afraid.
Especially as his glasses are so tiny, always on his head.
And not even allowing for the fact that my line on Dave Bautista up until this point, my family line is he can't deliver a line, which I don't actually.
I think that's a bit harsh.
No, that's not harsh. That's absolutely true, and he doesn't actually prove me wrong in this film. No, he does deliver a few lines, but he's a scary prospect. And in a way, that was the point, wasn't it, of sending him towards this tiny girl who looks up at him, and he lays out. Well, he's a nice, soft teacher, so his words belie completely his appearance. And at this point, we have no idea. I didn't know. That was the other thing I didn't know. It's very unusual for me. I've usually read a bit about films. I didn't know he directed it, and I didn't know it was what they call a post-apocalyptic thriller.
Post-apocalyptic. Oh, well, it wasn't post, it's a pre-apocalyptic.
I mean, at this point, it could have been. I didn't think it would be a horror because it sounds so much like the cabin in the woods.
Yeah. I thought that first scene was incredibly effective. I thought him wandering out of the woods, and there's a couple of things about this film that really struck me, and the way in which M. Night Shyamalan opted for an incredibly big close-up of Dave Bautista's face. And it was a really gentle scene. And I thought it was actually quite a clever scene to start a film off with that you are thinking cabin, woods, horror,
Dave Bautista.
Dave Bautista, and so you're immediately thinking this guy is not good. If you've seen the trailer, you know he's kind of, he's not bringing good news. But I was quite captivated by that first scene, and I thought it was quite good. And I was staggered by how quickly it moved into the drama. Out of that scene, she goes back into the house, then suddenly they're all on their way in.
It completely changes, doesn't it?
But within the first 5-10 minutes.
Yeah, well, that's almost like a prequel to the title, that bit. A preface, as they would say, that bit. And then she runs to the cabin.
Yeah.
The whole idea, and I had seen trailers of this film, of them all standing in line with... It's so much like us. It's such a steal from us.
Yeah,
which I couldn't get past.
I hadn't made that connection. But
oh God, I couldn't get past that for one. And then I get cross with myself because I think, just let it go. But certainly the way they set up is that they stand in a line, very rigid, with weapons. It looks like weapons.
Instantly having to stress, they have broken in, so they're clearly aggressive.
Yeah.
The gay couple are incredibly scared. The girl is incredibly scared. They're shutting all the windows. So we're kind of in classic, at this point, sort of horror set, really, I think.
Yeah.
You're not knowing what the hell they're doing. You can see from obstructed shots that they're sort of dragging archaic, they call them tools, but they're sort of weaponry. And so it's very threatening, that opening scene.
Up until that point, the point you're talking about, within its own terms, believable. And then what happens after that becomes totally unbelievable, because they give us the premise of why they're there, or this sort of reason, and none of it makes any sense from then on till the end of the film. I felt. So it lost me at that point.
So it lost you really early?
It lost me really early. I was up with it until they're standing in a line. Then they say, "What do you want?" I know, but I got cross as the film went on.
You got cross?
Yeah, because I'm like, at least give us a believable thing to hang this on. Yeah. And okay, the whole idea of the world ends like this and we don't believe it all.
Do you know what? I think you're right. And I think if you were going into this for a believable premise, I suppose I had jettisoned any believability around it, because I had a sense.
I wish I had done.
Well, and also in the trailer, this is the difficulty of a trailer, they have said something like, one of you has to kill yourself in order to rescue the world. Where I allowed myself to go quite quickly with this is, I thought it was sort of playing with one of those very idle things that one asks oneself. Like sometimes when I'm doing a run, if I'm struggling, I say to myself, if you don't do this in this time, your whole family's going to die.
Yeah.
And it urges me on. And I thought this was a film, I thought this was a not very serious film. I thought it was a distraction for the director. I thought it was a piece of fun for him to make.
Yeah.
And I actually thought at the very beginning, I think I almost remember letting it sort of parachute away from me, this idea of believability, because where I went to was quite quickly, actually. I said to myself, what would I do in these guys' position?
Yeah.
And I think that was helped by the fact, I want to give a real shout out. I thought Ben Aldridge, the gay partner, the one who's not got the concussion, he was so good.
I didn't think he was.
Oh my God, I thought he was so real, and his fear and his look that he was going to lose his partner, and he was angry, and he had the little flashbacks. All the flashbacks I thought were really clunky. The flashbacks to him obviously having anger issues, and I thought the way in which he was watching his partner and worrying that he might lose his partner, and him trying to kind of, I thought for me he really held that the couple, and quite quickly the couple are immobilized, and they've been presented with this fait accompli, which is, if you don't kill one of your group, the world is going to end. The bit that didn't make any sense was the group of four in the room had to make self-sacrifices all the way through. I thought that was unnecessary. I thought it was an opportunity to hear squelching heads, because it's pretty gruesome the way they do it. Yeah. But I suppose what I'm saying is I did allow myself to just blithely entertain the thought of, what would I do? If this was me and Nadia in this position, what would we do?
Yeah, in a way you're right. Maybe I'm being too sort of ridiculous to say that's the moment it ended for me, because I kept going off into those thoughts, because that's all you got. That's all I got.
It is all you've got. Yeah, no, I agree.
And although the one half of my brain kept saying, but this is ridiculous. Why does one have to die each time? Why? How does it save the world? Who do you tell? All nonsense. I didn't like the gay couple at all. I thought it was, from the moment that she says when she's collecting grasshoppers, I've got two dads. I thought politically correct, I don't like it. You're going to have to work hard to get me on this one.
Oh, right, okay. Well, I mean, what I liked about this was, I was also, the other thing that I allowed myself to do was I was asking questions about these guys. I thought it was I tell you what I did think it was. I thought it was an interesting, weirdly, algorithmic film. Because at one point, the gay couple, one of the gay couple, members of the gay couple is saying to them, you've seen this online, someone else has seen this online, you've seen the same content thrown at you again, which is what happens. This is how these incel groups develop. And I thought, this is interesting actually, because this is actually, in a sense, a horror film, or certainly a thriller, pivoting around the idea that this sort of fundamentalism can be generated within a group
Yes.
who believes one member and then becomes driven by another.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't. There was a religiosity to it, but there was also this suggestion or fear that, and what was weird about that suggestion from the gay couple was, if that's what they were, I suddenly got really frightened about them, because I thought, oh my God, they have been mobilised online, they've been groomed, or they've all kind of they're delusional.
Yeah.
And I thought it was actually, and this is where I disagree about Dave Bautista, I actually thought he was very good at navigating that boundary between, is he a monster?
Yeah.
Is he a gentle giant? Is he a monster? Is he a gentle giant?
Yeah.
And I thought the fact, ironically, I thought it was quite counterintuitive, that he stays calm even when what happens to him at the end happens to him. I thought that was quite clever casting.
Yeah.
Because his physicality makes you think this guy is going to kill them.
Yeah, I mean, I liked him much more by the end of the film than I've ever liked him before, as an actor, as a general performer. I mean, forget Drax, because he's perfect as Drax. But yeah, no, I thought it was his debut in that respect, as in a full sort of acting role. But there were moments, so I'm sort of exaggerating to say I didn't cut off. It taught me, I had to focus on something. And what I focused on was the fact that they're two gay guys, and it could be somebody against gay guys, which they say from the beginning.
They suggest that.
Yeah, they do. And then I went with that in my head. I thought, I've got to hang on to something as a possible idea, because it cannot be that it's the end of the world coming because of so.
But in a way, wasn't it the ridiculousness of that suggestion that I think created quite a clever narrative confusion?
Yeah.
Because I think it was so ridiculous. I mean, I was sitting there thinking, this can't be real. This is not real. This is why I think it was almost like a director playing with a toy set. He had a thought, he jotted it down on a piece of paper. It was no more sophisticated than a thought.
No.
And that thought translated into a film with a bunch of people said, yeah, I'm free this week, let's shoot it. I thought was mildly more diverting than I was expecting it to be.
Yeah, in that respect, and that's going totally against what I said in the beginning, it was me. I mean, it was more diverting than I expected it to be. I kept getting cross over ridiculous things, and
I can imagine how you could, because I think if I went in with a slightly different kind of mindset, I too would have thought, oh, that's ridiculous.
Yeah,
a bit like Old. I mean, similar thing in Old happened, but
except the whole idea of Old is so profound.
We all entertain thoughts of the end of the world.
Yeah, we do.
We all have apocalyptic thoughts. And I think at a time when the world feels most vulnerable, in an age of algorithmic kind of worry and civil war suggested on the sort of...
yes, it's totally...
There were bits of that threaded in. I mean, that wasn't its themes, it wasn't its subject, but it incidentally kind of...
You're right in a way, because yes, as my mind's wandering, and because I'm not that engaged, I have to say, with what's happening on the screen, maybe not as much as you were, didn't like the gay couple. She's non-existent after the first bit. Introducing the four and then killing them. I mean, Grint comes off worse, doesn't he? Because
I thought Rupert Grint's character was appalling. I mean, I thought it was nonsense.
And also, did they try to marry that with something that had happened in the past?
Yes, but he'd attacked him in a bar.
Yeah, which, as
the
you
flashbacks
say,
didn't work for me.
No, they didn't. But also, that was it by way of explanation. It was to plant things in our head, and you're exactly right. That's what Shyamalan does.
Shyamalan.
Is that he sits down and he writes possible things,
and they're quite good ideas.
They are quite good
but he doesn't
ideas.
think them through fully in terms of the execution. So I always get this frustration with him that I'm kind of like,
yeah.
And that's how I felt throughout this. I was kind of, for me, Dave Bautista, physically, quite literally, anchored this film in a surprising fashion for me. I went to that dark place of flipping hell. You know, there's that, and all parents go to that place of choosing. If I had to choose, of course I would kill myself. And so there was that sort of, that idea. And then there was the idea that he felt he was losing his partner. I thought, I disagree. I really thought Ben Aldridge played that really well. I really believed him. And what he was realising was this guy, his partner, was being taken over to this notion that maybe it is the end of the world.
Yeah, I think what he does, this director, is I mean, I really did take maybe I took against it too much, the line-up, and thinking that this is a complete rip-off of Us. And if I was the director of Us, I'd be furious, because that's the thing on all the posters. And it doesn't matter that Bautista is bigger than normal or whatever. That's what... And it's because he's got these visual ideas or ideas, and then goes nowhere with them. And then part of my brain is watching it thinking, well, I'm not going to leave the cinema because it all seems so ridiculous. So I focused on the fact that although I thought it was politically correct, and maybe I didn't like the fact that they were two gay guys. Then I thought, to keep me going in the cinema, to keep me sitting there, I thought, it's some far-right group that found out that they're gay, and they're dressing it up with this end of the world thing, but what they mean the end of the world for gay people. Yeah. I could just sit with that for a while, because that was possible. But then, this is what he does, this director. He digs himself a hole. They kept showing us clips, and we became aware that actually they meant the end of the world. And
Well, I quite like that moment. When you're then given the denouement, you think that's ridiculous.
yeah,
That was the point I thought, that's ridiculous. But it succeeded in taking me down a really sort of troubling cul-de-sac of thought where I was thinking, oh Christ, what would I do there? So I was kind of surprised. And also, just before we sum up, I thought the reason he was smashing their heads in, or they were sacrificing themselves, was if you strip those moments of kind of violence out and sort of just gratuitous violence, it would have been a very difficult film to keep going, actually, with just Batista. Because I was thinking you could have just had Batista, who was strong enough for it to just be Batista and them, and it become a much more sort of psychoanalytical, psychological kind of drama. And actually, those kind of moments were like Shyamalan going, we need a bit of drop, and let's hit him on the head. And so clumsy
very
at times.
clumsy. I love the odd thing, which are my sort of things that I love in anything, which they brought in the 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse, which I love that bit. I thought, go with that, go with that.
And I thought, I know the idea of the end of the world was a bit naff, but I thought it was really effective. I thought it was really like, the planes falling out of the sky. I thought I could see that happening. If someone hacked, air traffic control. I was like, and I thought that was really symbolic. It was one of those moments in a film where you're going, flipping heck.
Yeah.
So sum up and give us your score, Mum.
Okay, well, I went in not knowing anything and not even knowing the director, and then as I've described, thinking all sorts of things, most of them not sort of complimentary about it. I suppose the one thing that turned me around quite a bit was, my line has always been, Dave Bautista can't stay alive. Well, he can, and I quite sort of softly warmed to him, so by the end I thought,
so he's made the right decision in his career path, doesn't he? Yeah, because I think everyone's thought, right, because I thought he was very good in Glass Onion as well. So I do
although
think
he was a more sort of conventional.
His ambition is to appear in a rom-com. I'm not entirely sure that will happen.
No, he is an extraordinary thing to look at. I mean, I can only say thing because
Maddie likened, he's got these curious sort of indentations on his head. She likened his head, what do you think of this, guys, to a pruning toe or thumb in the bath.
I can see that.
You can see that, can't you?
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, there was that. There was my annoyance with the symbol of the 4 of them standing there. There was my annoyance at the fact that they were using a gay couple, but then that became something for me to hang my interest on, which I wouldn't have had otherwise. What he does is, I mean, in Old, although it all went spectacularly wrong, the very idea of that, which is, as you say, you're running and I'm walking sometimes and think, what if we all just age suddenly? There are ideas that we think of as in our own minds, aren't there? But there's no logic to them.
He's a great ideas man.
He is a great ideas man. And so I sort of sat with it and became increasingly sort of frustrated with the fact that there was no way it could be real.
Right, yeah.
And so I actually hadn't until this moment thought about what I'm going to give it, and I would give it 65.
Oh my God, 65.
Yeah, that's too high.
Is it? Think of the numbers.
Kept me in the cinema. It kept me in the cinema.
That's hardly a compliment, is it?
No, 45.
45,
is
okay.
more likely.
Okay, what I'm going to say about this film is I think it's a perfect film to watch with your mates on a Friday night in the cinema.
Yeah, actually,
it's
right.
a popcorn movie. It's not trying to be anything serious, as we've just said. I think it has some great ideas in it. I would recommend that if you go and see it, just put yourself in the position of the gay couple and the unenviable choice they're given, because if you've got loved ones and friends or whatever, it's gonna trouble you. You're like, ugh. And I kind of got most enjoyment from the cleverness of his idea rather than the execution of the film.
Yeah,
I think Dave Bautista,
well put,
right? I think Dave Bautista was a surprise. I thought he was good.
As
I say, I like Ben Aldridge, the gay guy. I like the gay couple. I thought the 3 other characters were subservient to the whole thing, unnecessary. And you're right, I hadn't thought of that. It was very like Us. But I vaguely found this, and this is curious, I thought this was, as a whole, one of the most successful M. Night Shyamalan films I've seen. I thought it's a B movie, and you don't often get B movies that
you're absolutely
have
right.
things wrong with it, but you're kind of taken on a ride.
Yeah.
And I was just taken on a ride.
And almost that makes me think, sorry to nip back in, but almost makes me wonder if that's why they kept the title as it was, because we know that anything in the wood, cabin and wood in the same sentence.
Yeah, it's going to make you think of horror,
or absolutely. So in that sense, maybe it was deliberate.
Yeah. Well, honestly, they need to drop the. Sometimes there's something you call a rhythm to a film, but there's a rhythm to a title.
Yeah.
And the knock at the cabin would have been much better.
Yeah.
So what would I give it? I would probably give this, for what it is. I mean, obviously, I gave Tara. These are incomparable films, and when we give the scores, it's kind of coming at it for what it is. I would give it.
Tara,
oh, very low. I'd give this 55.
Okay, so 10 more than me, which sounds about right,
55.
actually. Yeah.
So there you go. Tell us what you think. If you've gone to seen it, tell us what you think. Are you a Dave Bautista fan? Has he turned you round? Is he now a serious sort of method actor? That might be
Do
going
you
a bit
worry
far.
about the end of the world?
And is M. Night Shyamalan an ideas man, or is he a wonderful, wonderful director? Share your thoughts below.